Welcome to another episode of the Sports Bros Podcast, featuring the Almighty B Live, the Money Man Scotty D, and your host, the head of creative, Eddie Cool. And without any further ado, let's give it up for the Sports Bros.
Hey, greetings sports fans, and welcome to the Sports Bros Podcast. This is Scotty D, a.k.a. the Money Man, and folks, the votes are in. The popular vote for the most awesome sports bro goes to me, yours truly. We're going to hear from my other sports bros, Eddie Cool, the head of creative, and the almighty B Live here coming up in just a little bit during our Choices of the Voices segment. But hey, what an interesting weekend we had. I'm going to share Scott's thoughts on college football. Some real plot twists took place this past weekend. I'll tell you what I learned in the NFL this past week. And we'll take a quick peek into the world of combat sports. But first, I need to say goodbye to the 2020 baseball season. Last Tuesday night, the Dodgers squeaked out a 3-1 victory over the Tampa Bay Rays to win their first World Series title since 1988. They took the series 4-2. And as big as a story as this should have been for the team and for the core of those players who were playing in their third World Series together, finally getting their championship, they finally got over the hump on their third try. This was a big win for Clayton Kershaw, obviously getting his first ring, but the whole thing seemed to be overshadowed by two different stories. First, after owning the Dodgers, absolutely owning the Dodgers through the first 5 innings, Blake Snell, pitcher, allowed a 1-out hit to Austin Barnes, which prompted manager Kevin Cash to replace Snell with reliever Nick Anderson. This is after only 73 pitches. It prevented him from facing the top of the order for a third time. Top of the order, Mookie Betts was coming up. He had already fanned the top 3 guys in the lineup twice each. These guys were 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts against him. Mookie Betts would then come up and single a wild pitch, would score Austin Barnes, and then Betts would eventually score on a fielder's choice, giving them a 2-1 lead that never relinquish. He would later homer to finish the game at a 3-1 final. The Dodgers expressed that they were happy that Kevin Cash removed Snell from the game. Kevin Cash saying afterwards that while he was unhappy with the result, the analytics suggested that going through the lineup for a third time would not be in the best interest of Snell, which is going to be a move that'll be second-guessed forever. Blake Snell had complete command of the strike zone that night. He was in total control. He had only thrown, as I mentioned before, 73 pitches. This guy is a former Cy Young Award winner, and it's a shame that he got taken out. Because you know what, even if he gives up a run in that inning, so what? He's still giving you the best chance. Again, Nick Anderson came in, and he's been reliable for the Rays. That bullpen has been outstanding for them all postseason. But I think at some point you have to put away analytics and manage with your heart and use your eyes. I mean, the whole world was watching. We saw Blake Snell was owning the Dodgers. So unfortunately for them, the season comes to an end. They did not get to move on to that 7th game, and the Dodgers did celebrate on the field, which brings us to our next point, and that is Justin Turner. Justin Turner, let's just say this. I was all set to compliment Major League Baseball because of the way they handled the COVID situation in the postseason. They had the bubble in Texas. They had a bubble in California, and it seemed like they were going to get through it unscathed. No COVID, going to get through it, and they were basically 1 inning away from that happening when Turner got lifted. Now, there seems to be a lot of confusion about what happened during the course of that final game, that Game 6, that the test results came out late that evening, later than they had been throughout the playoffs, that Turner may have had a positive or a false positive. They didn't want to Major League Baseball maybe botched this as much as the Dodgers and Turner did. There's still going to be a lot more information to come out. The investigation's still going on, so we don't know a whole lot about that. And I'm not going to kill Turner too badly for this because I understand this guy has been part of this team, and the dream for this team has been to win the World Series. This team is built to be a World Series champion. I mean, no question about it. They've been one of the best teams in baseball for the last several years, and they finally break through. And Justin Turner wanted to be out there with his guys celebrating, and I get it. I understand. But what a bad look this presented. I mean, just think of if Justin Turner had not been on the field, not been on had the team photo or the chance to be out there after the game, he would have been one of the most sympathetic figures from this whole pandemic as far as sports goes. And now he's looked at as a selfish, sort of careless jerk. I mean, again, I'm not gonna burn him too bad on it because from his perspective, he probably figures, hey, I was already in the dugout with these guys for the last 3 hours. This is, if I have a virus and I'm going to spread it to these guys, that damage has already been done. But these guys had their family out on the field at this point. And some of these guys had some health conditions, and some of the family members had some health conditions. It was just a bad look. Again, I don't want to go too far into it. We haven't even heard from Justin Turner yet at this point, but during the pandemic situation, I think it was just a bad look. And it's kind of, again, it's sad that it's overshadowing what was a historic night for the Dodgers. You got Dave Roberts finally breaking through as the manager, putting some of his past postseason demons to rest, and especially for Clayton Kershaw. So that was really cool. And Corey Seager took home the MVP, and congratulations for the Dodgers for winning the championship. Congratulations. For me, I'm already sad because I already missed baseball. I love baseball. I enjoyed it. I cry and I moan and complain because I spend a lot of time watching the Pittsburgh Pirates. But I am a true baseball lover. I love baseball. So I'm now looking forward to the old hot stove season to see how teams are going to shape up for next year and to see how Major League Baseball is going to handle the 2021 season. We're not sure what that's going to look like. But again, I cannot wait for pitchers and catchers to report. And again, congratulations to the Dodgers, the 2020 World Series champions. All right, moving on to the NFL. Last week, I finished my segment of the NFL saying that I had learned Steelers good, Cowboys bad. And this coming Sunday, those two teams will be facing off in Dallas. But as for this past Sunday, they both faced quarterbacks who turned the ball over 4 times. The Steelers took on the Baltimore Ravens in Baltimore. The Ravens, coming off of a bye week, seemed to be in control of this game, having a 17-7 lead at halftime. The Steelers basically got dominated in time of possession and statistics, but won the game 28-24. After the game, Mike Tomlin said that while the Steelers respect Lamar Jackson, they do not fear him. And I feel like that could be the sentiment that is now happening around the NFL. Big Ben Roethlisberger showed that he is still the best quarterback in that division. Again, it wasn't Ben's prettiest game, but Ben, knowing how to win, got that done, and Lamar Jackson came up just short at the end, his final pass into the end zone, falling short. And again, the Ravens now find themselves a couple games behind the Steelers for that division. This running quarterback thing, I've seen it before. If you go back to 2012, the running quarterback thing seemed to be picking up steam with RG3. Remember, Robert Griffin III was running all over the league, and Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson. And Lamar Jackson, he's almost like a running back who throws. Russell Wilson, out of those other 3 that I mentioned, is a quarterback who has a high football IQ, an incredible skill set, and runs as part of his game, whereas I feel like these other guys, as a running quarterback, it's going to catch up to you between injuries and being forced to eventually win games by standing in a pocket and throwing a football. you have to be able to do that in the NFL. The flash and dash of the running quarterback, man, I don't like it. I think that we have seen already the best of Lamar Jackson. Now he's on film. Defensive coordinators spend so much time going over game film and breaking down tape, and they learn the nuances that these running quarterbacks have. And I think Lamar Jackson at this point is starting to come back to earth a little bit. Again, I think that we have already seen the best of him. Not that he's not a good quarterback, but I feel like in order for him and the Ravens to take a next step, he's going to have to improve his footwork as far as standing in the pocket and throwing the football. And his natural instinct is to take off and run. And speaking of quarterbacks who like to run and maybe a little bit overhyped and underperforming, Carson Wentz on Sunday night went head-to-head in the Sunday Night Football game against the legendary Cowboys quarterback, Ben DiNucci. Ben DiNucci, here's something we learned this week. He is not going to be the second coming of Tony Romo for Cowboys fans. A lot of Cowboy message boards that I read this past week were excited for Ben DiNucci to hit the scene, thinking this guy is going to provide a spark for the team, and that did not happen. You know, at this point, the Cowboys going down 23-9 on Sunday night. It was a miserable game. It was not fun to watch. It wasn't pretty. And I know Chris Collinsworth was selling it as, man, this is very entertaining, but it was a disaster. It was awful. If you're an Eagles fan, where do you sit with Carson Wentz at this point? A few years ago, before his injury, he looked like a world beater, like he was up and coming. And granted, I know that the Eagles have been absolutely ravaged by injuries as well. I feel like the Cowboys, the Eagles, 49ers are teams that really are more crushed with injuries this year than anyone. I know every team has them, but some of these teams have been completely devastated. And I know Carson Wentz is taking his lumps right now. But I have to tell you, I'd rather be the Cowboys right now, tanking and trying to get into a better draft position for next year, whereas the Eagles sitting at, what's their record, 3-4-1. They're going to get the, most likely, if the season seems to progress the way that it's appearing it's going to, they're going to end up being the division winners, maybe only winning 3 or 4 more games, being under 500, and they're going to host a playoff game, as crazy as that sounds. And I can't see them winning a playoff game, even at home, or advancing very far. Now, I know they're going to get Miles Sanders back. Zach Ertz is going to come back. Wentz is going to have, a little bit more help. But at this point, the NFC East is it's a complete nightmare. So what else did I learn this past week? I learned that Drew Brees is not Drew Brees of 2 to 3 years ago. Man, he just doesn't look the same to me. He went out and got the job done. They did win. The Saints went to Chicago and won an overtime game 26-23. But I feel like Brees is coming down the final stretch, heading straight to his retirement here at the end of the season. Next Sunday, this coming Sunday, they're going to get another crack at Tom Brady. The Saints outdueled Tom Brady. They actually took it to him pretty good on opening day, and that was when everyone's like, oh, look at Brady, he's not the same guy anymore. And I said, let's just relax, because that was opening day, and he had not had the off season that you ordinarily would because of the COVID situation. So we'll find out this coming week if Brady's able to sort of get that one back. If Tampa Bay wins that one, they'll most likely take. Well, they not most likely. They are going to be fully in control of that division. Chicago, also a team with quarterback problems. The Foles-Trubisky duo they're winning. They have a winning record, but things don't look good in Chicago. You could just hear Troy Aikman's disgust on that way that offense appeared as he did the game on Sunday. So I don't really actually know what to make of the NFC North. You look at the Vikings, 28-22 victory over the Packers, and the Packers are a team that I can't seem to figure out. It looks like they got out-physicaled by the Vikings, who I think that was only their second win of the season. The Packers are seemingly still in control of this division, but a win there really would have put them out front that really would have separated them. But they got dominated by Dalvin Cook to the tune of 163 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, I still like the Pack, but the Pack, man, you got to get a little bit mean in you. You got to get some mean. I learned that maybe the Seahawks are going to get a little bit mean. They're going to add Carlos Dunlap as a pass rusher that they desperately need, and Jamal Adams, the safety they just traded for, one of the best in the NFL. He's going to be coming back from injury. I got to think that that's going to make Seattle the favorite in the NFC. I was saying last week that Seattle looked great offensively. Russell Wilson looks like the MVP candidate, but the defense is leaving a lot to be desired. Well, getting Dunlap and Adams is definitely going to help. They won 37-27 over the 49ers, who the 49ers were, earlier in the season, they had a bad loss to the Dolphins. We kind of wrote them off. Then they had a couple good wins, a big win in New England last week. They're still the defending champions, but man, they got hit hard with injuries this past week. And the Rams, they went out to Miami and they took a loss, 28-17, in the debut of Tua. And Tua, he didn't have a stellar, memorable rookie day, but the Dolphins, they took their opportunity the bye week to tell Ryan Fitzpatrick, we're going to make a move. We're going to let Tua start getting his feet wet here, and it worked for the most part. I mean, he had an okay day. He didn't really hurt him. But speaking of young quarterbacks, we also learned that the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Bengals all have their man. The Chargers, boy, this team, you got to feel for them. They've now had 4 consecutive games where they were winning by at least 16 and lost all of them. They lost 31-30 to Denver. Drew Lock and Justin Herbert in a little bit of a young guy shootout there. And the Bengals, Joe Burrow had probably the signature win of his early career with a 31-20 win over Tennessee. And I think we also learned that as far as young quarterbacks go, Baker Mayfield is not the man. Last week he had a decent showing. This week he laid an egg. 17-6 loss to the Raiders. Boy, I tell you, I think with Baker, this is as good as it's going to get. You're going to have games where he's going to get hot, and then you're going to have games like this where he's going to lay an egg. And as far as the Kansas City Jets game, I learned nothing. I already knew Kansas City is the best team in the NFL. They destroyed the Jets 35-9, who, as we know, are the worst team in the NFL. I learned nothing really from Indy, 41-31 over Detroit. And one thing I feel like I learned is, finally on the NFL note, is that the Bills are not actually viable contenders. They did win 24-21 over the Patriots this past week, but Cam Newton was close to scoring on these boys and taking that victory right away from them. I'm sure you've seen by now. Cam put it on the ground, he fumbled, and the Bills covered it up and won that game. But I was expecting a little bit more of the Bills this far in the season. Josh Allen, their young quarterback, he's looking. At times he looks really good, but I was kind of expecting the Bills. And granted, they're ahead. They have control of that division so far. Barring some kind of epic meltdown of a Bills-like proportion. But I think the Bills, I was just expecting a little bit more, and they seem to be struggling at this point in the season. But who knows? What do I know, man? It's a long season, and that's what I learned in the NFL so far after this following weekend, this Halloween weekend, and as we turn over into the month of November. So college football. Wow. Well, college football had a little bit of a rough time getting out of the blocks this year because no one knew what to do about the COVID situation. And it is actually affecting the sport right now. We saw the whole Wisconsin team ravaged by the virus, and it affects now the top team in the country, as Trevor Lawrence missed not only last week's game against Boston College, but this coming week's game against Notre Dame, and that's a pretty significant game to miss. His Heisman odds have slipped. Mac Jones, the quarterback of Alabama, they're undefeated, and Justin Fields. I know the Ohio State's just getting started, but he's making a case after busting up Penn State this past week. But the odds makers have actually lowered Trevor Lawrence's chances of winning the Heisman down a little bit. Not to say that he's not going to win the Heisman. We don't know that. But a big signature win over Notre Dame this week could probably have sealed the deal here. Instead, we saw freshman DJ Ukulele. Now, I know that's not how you really say his last name, but I have not yet put in the time and commitment to learn how to pronounce it properly. And B Live is not here. And I wish he was, because college football is something he really he gets into that. B Live, we need to get you up out of your hibernation here, brother, and help me out with this pronunciation. But freshman DJ Ukulele from Clemson is, one of the top young quarterbacks in the country. He's highly recruited, and this past week he didn't get much time to prepare to play Boston College. This Trevor Lawrence announcement came out late in the week, and to me, Ukulele looked a little bit nervous, a little tight to start the game. Again, he only had a few days to prepare. He had a handoff that went wrong to running back ATN that resulted in a 99-yard touchdown, where he kind of, instead of hitting him down in the gut with it, he put it up towards his chest. After the game got going there, Clemson fell behind early. He got into the flow of the game. The better team took over, and Clemson remains undefeated and number one. This coming week, he'll have a full week to prepare for number 4 Notre Dame. Clemson is a 7-point favorite, so we'll see how that shakes out. Again, Alabama, Ohio State taking care of business. Very significant game this past week, in my opinion, was that Michigan goes down to Michigan State 27-24. They were outplayed and outcoached, and Michigan is now 1-6, 1-6 at home against Michigan State and Ohio State. And those are the teams really that Jim Harbaugh was brought there to defeat 6 years ago. I remember 6 years ago when they hired him, I thought, wow, this is going to make that Ohio State-Michigan rivalry really intense. This thing, once Harbaugh gets a chance to recruit a little bit, he's going to be a viable contender each year for the Big Ten title, and he's gonna be a problem for Ohio State. And now we're a month away from him being 0-6 against Ohio State, because they're unless something incredible happens, they're not going to beat them this year either. So Harbaugh, man, his contract ends after 2021. Where does he go, and where does Michigan go? Do you keep bringing him back? Like I said, you paid this guy a lot of money. You paid him to come in here and win these games that he's not winning. Those are the games you have to win. Michigan State, Ohio State, that's who you have to beat. Obviously there's other teams on the schedule, but as far as the Big Ten goes, Michigan and Ohio State are the team that are supposedly, and Penn State supposedly, supposed to rule the roost. And right now it's Ohio State and everyone else. So I'm really interested to see how this is going to shake out with Jim Harbaugh. Is it Michigan's best interest to just keep bringing him back and hope that things get better, or do they move on? Does he want to move on, realize that this isn't working out the way he thought it was going to? Does he end up back in the NFL? Maybe assisting his brother, maybe coaching the Jets next year? Who knows? A lot to be determined there, but very interesting to see how college football is shaking out here, trying to overcome COVID. Coastal Carolina wins again. Hey, let's go Chanticleers. All right, now if I could, please have my young friend Miss Button introduce our next segment. Thank you very much, Miss Button. The Choices of the Voices is our favorite part of the show. We did not get to this last week, but I'm going to move right along into it here this week. The question that I asked, that I posed to you all a few weeks back, was, what is your favorite or a memorable moment or game from Monday Night Football? Tell us about one of your favorite moments or favorite games from Monday Night Football. Only talking Monday nights. And we had a couple cool answers here. We had Mike Clarity say, if you were a fantasy football team owner, the Eagles and Redskins game when Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson lit up the scoreboard from the start of the game. And I think he's referring back to, I believe it was 2013. Mike Vick had an 88-yard touchdown pass on the first play of scrimmage. The Eagles end up winning that night, 59-28. They busted them up. Again, if you were a fantasy football guy, that was a huge night for you if you had Mike Vick on your team. Scott Kalish said the Steelers versus the Dolphins, when it rained so bad, a punt literally stuck in the mud. The Steelers won the game on a Jeffrey field goal at the end, 3-0. Yeah, not so much a thriller there, but it was a memorable one. Paul Blust mentioned the Patriots-Dolphins game of December 8th, 1980. That was the night that the announcement came across that John Lennon had died. He had been shot earlier that evening in New York City, and Howard Cosell was, I believe, the one who broke the story to the nation that night. And so that was memorable, not such a great memory, but definitely a memorable evening for Monday Night Football. Joe Comfort said in the mid-late 80s, he thinks it was 1987, the Raiders traveled to Seattle for Monday Night Football, and Bo Jackson wrecked the Seahawk defense for 200-plus yards and had to use the tunnel on a 90-yard run. He also trucked Brian Bosworth at the goal line for another score. That was awesome. I remember the Boz, much hyped, meeting Bo on about the 2-yard line. Now, boom! And that was it. Bo Jackson rolled right on into the end zone for the touchdown. And that was pretty much the end of the Boz. I don't think the Boz was ever the same again, really, after that. Uncle Max, we appreciate you for contributing here, Uncle Max. Talking about the night that Brett Favre ruled the Raiders after his father had passed away. That was an emotional one. He went off that night. He really did. And that was one of those memorable, legendary performances that if you watch that game, you'll never forget, because the high emotion that night of Favre having just lost his father. Mark Olds. Here's one that I like. Tony Dorsett against the Vikings, 99-yard run. He also cites the worst as Lawrence Taylor breaking Joe Theismann's leg. I'll get to that in a second here, but the 99-yard touchdown run is probably my favorite all-time moment. I'm going to agree with him. It was actually 99.5 yards, and the Cowboys only had 10 men on the field, and it was awesome. And Derrick Henry did tie that mark a couple years ago, but that's a record that you can't beat it. You can't go more than 99 yards, 99.5 yards. Pete Talansky also brings up the Giants-Redskins game, November 18th, 1985, when Lawrence Taylor broke Theismann's leg, and he says he remembers that even LT was freaked out by the injury. He was waving for the paramedics. Yeah, that was the first time we really had seen that type of injury. We've seen several of those now through the years in various sports, but that one, Theismann snapping that leg in half. Oh, man, that's hard to watch. Even now, I can't rewatch that when I see that come across somewhere. Nah, not watching that one, man. But yeah, LT even, yeah, he freaked out on that one too. Then Matty Ice, what's up, Martin Tracy? Matty Ice, he's talking about the 1985 Miami Dolphins and Dan Marino on Monday Night Football. One of the most watched games ever, and it ended the undefeated chance of the heralded Monsters of the Midway Chicago Bears. The Bears coming off of shutouts, they were 12-0, came into Miami and ran into the buzzsaw that was Dan Marino. And had the Patriots not destroyed Miami in the AFC title game that year, a better Super Bowl for everyone involved would have been a rematch of this game. That's true. I had actually forgotten about that. That was the same year that the Patriots did upset Miami with Tony Eason. The Bears would demolish those poor Patriots 46-10 in the Super Bowl that year. Chicago's only Super Bowl victory. Let's hear from our sports bros. Let's hear from B Live and Eddie Cool on what you guys say. Memorable Monday Night Football moments or games. All right. I appreciate those answers, my bros, and I think we'll talk a little bit more going forward next week. Again, I mentioned Tony Dorsett as mine, the 99-yard touchdown run against the Vikings. Also, there was a game that the Cowboys played, I believe it was 2008. This was a Monday Night Football game against the Eagles. It was pretty much a shootout. This is the night that Deshaun Jackson dropped the ball at the 1-yard line and Pac-Man Jones picked it up. We had Tony Romo hitting a bomb to Terrell Owens. It was a back and forth game, and the Cowboys won. That means nothing to you, but I also wanted to mention as I put a couple pictures up on Facebook. I don't know if you saw those. The Antonio Freeman catch where he was sliding, and Al Michaels said he did what? He just kind of tipped the ball to himself while he was laying on the ground, and ended up into the end zone. And also, one of the historic nights was after following Hurricane Katrina, when the Falcons came into New Orleans, just got busted up. Started with that crazy block punt, and the dome was rocking, and the Saints got a win that night. All good answers, and I thank you all for participating in Choices of the Voices. Look for this each and every week on Facebook. Next week is just going to be a choice of two. Here's our question for next week. Who is most likely to repeat championships in 2021? The LA Lakers to win another NBA title back-to-back, or the LA Dodgers to win the World Series again back-to-back? Lakers or Dodgers to repeat, and tell us why you feel that way. Maybe you think neither. You can say that. It's your choice, your voice. But anyway, that is our Choices of the Voices segment for next week.
Oh, this is an absolute no-brainer when it comes to my favorite Monday Night Football moment, because I was there for the game. The head of creative, Eddie Cool, we were in there. 2015, Carolina Panthers versus the Indianapolis Colts. Andrew Luck versus Cam Newton. Man, oh man, what a night. It was cold, very, very wet. But you could not tell me just, oh man, the excitement, just the feel. You've got the Carolina Panthers trying to remain the only undefeated team in all the NFL. Colts coming into town. And what made this so significant, because this was one of the first games that ended up going into overtime with the new overtime rules where each team gets possession unless the first team gets a touchdown. So just back and forth. Game tied up, going into overtime. It is raining. We're getting drenched. We go into overtime. Me, Eddie Cool, Nick Way, Ian Woodward, we are all there at the game. We're just like, you know what? It's cold, it's wet. We gotta find some cover. And we ended up walking downstairs, because a lot of people have already left the game. We ended up walking downstairs underneath, and so we could still see the game. Man, so cold. But man, Indy kicks a field goal. Makes the field goal. So they're up 3 in overtime. Usually that would be the game and we just go home sad. But we get a chance to possession of the ball. Graham Gano, boom, ties it up the game. And then at the end of the day, he gets another chance. I believe it was a 52-yarder. We kick another field goal. Game, set, match. Carolina Panthers stay undefeated. Man, oh man, what a game with great friends. Just an overall awesome time. And on top of that, the tickets were free. I won them through a company contest when I was general manager at Applebee's. Thank you, Applebee's. Greatly appreciate it. Man, what a game.
Hey, what's going on, world? It's Eddie Cool, 1/3 of the Sports Bros podcast. And shout out to the money man Scotty D for holding it down while the HOC takes his yearly sabbatical away from everybody and everything. But just to let y'all know, I'm doing well, fine, good, dandy, and I miss y'all. And we're going to be back 3 strong coming soon in the very near future. Of course, you know, this is the Choices of the Voices segment. And as always, thank you to the wonderful and lovely Miss Button for always introducing our favorite part of the show where we ask you questions. You give us the answers. We might pick at you. We might talk about it. It might be enlightening, educating, but that's neither here nor there. So here we go. So Scotty D posed a question. What was your best or favoriteest Monday night moment? So I had some time to think about that. And 2 come off the top of my mind like instant, like number 1 and number 2. The first will be the game in 2018. I think it was November the 18th, 2018. Don't hold me to it. Between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Los Angeles Rams. It was a matchup between Patrick Mahomes and Jared Goff, and they had the league on fire. I think up to that point, the Rams had lost 1 game, and Kansas City had only lost 2 games, if I'm not mistaken. Remember, I'm not an expert. Don't hold me to it. But the records were neither here nor there. Now, the backstory to this game was it was supposed to be played in Mexico City, but due to the field conditions from a soccer game and a Shakira concert, I guess league officials were like, well, no, we can't do this. We got to have our player safety concerns at first. So they decided to move the game to the LA Coliseum in Los Angeles, California. Now, at the time, there was a shooting in Thousand Oaks, California, where a dozen people lost their lives. And also on top of that, that area was also dealing with a wildfire. So just imagine the tension between those 2 events. And oh, yeah, we're going to put on a football game, too. And I remember during parts of the night where it was smoky, but they still played a hellacious, hellified, wonderful football game. It is the 3rd highest scoring game in NFL history with a grand total of 105 points and over 1,000 yards of total offense. As we know, the Rams went to the Super Bowl and they lost by a little bit. And Patrick Mahomes, well, the only thing he did that year was throw for 50 touchdowns and get an MVP award. So that's my choice number 1. Choice number 2, the obvious one would have to be the 2003 Monday Night Football game between the Green Bay Packers and the Oakland Raiders in Oakland, California. Brett Favre was still the Packers quarterback at the time. It stands out because Brett Favre started his 204th consecutive game, and this game had a different tone to it because it was the day after his father, Irv, passed away from a heart attack. So Brett was like, well, you know what? I could do 2 things. Sit here and sulk about it, or my father would want me to go play football. And that's exactly what Brett Favre did. The Oakland Raiders crowd, the Black Oak, they cheered them because normally, they're one of the most toughest and intimidating crowds in all of NFL. But they showed a little softer side out of respect to the man known as Brett Favre for him losing his father. Trust me, I done lost a handful of relatives, and I understand how it is, man. I understand how it is, first-hand account. Needless to say, the Green Bay Packers won that game 41-7 as they destroyed the Oakland Raiders. Brett Favre's biggest worry was, hey, I hope I don't go out here and lay an egg. Well, you didn't lay an egg to the tune of 399 passing yards and 4 total touchdowns. Yep, so those are my Monday Night Football memories. The Chiefs and Rams back in 2018 and the Packers and the Raiders in 2003. Once again, thanks for listening to the Sports Bros podcast. We greatly appreciate it. And in closing, well, nope, I'll say that for when I get back. Hey, take care of yourselves. We love you. And keep on listening to the Sports Bros podcast. Back over to you, Scotty D.
All right, before we get out of here for the week, I just wanted to hit real quick a couple topics on the world of combat sports. Last week, I was talking about Khabib Nurmagomedov defending his title against Justin Gaethje, and then he retired. And as I mentioned, Khabib was really emotional because he had lost his father, and he was retiring because him and his mother spoke and didn't feel right about him continuing to fight without his father in his corner. What I didn't know until after I recorded that was that Khabib chose to submit Justin Gaethje the way he did because Gaethje's parents were in attendance. He decided instead of putting Gaethje in an armbar and potentially hurting him and injuring him in front of his parents, he was just going to go ahead and take him out with a choke. That way, Gaethje he taps out, and a couple minutes later, he's all good. That's incredible. It just goes to show you what an incredible competitor that Khabib is. He can just choose. He can just pick however he wants to beat you. No, I'm not going to knock you out. No, I'm not going to armbar you. I'm just going to choke you. That way, when things are over, you and your parents can go hang out and everything's going to be cool. That is a heart of a champion and a heart of a humanitarian. And I tell you, I did hear Dana White say this week that it's possible. No, he's thinking maybe Khabib was emotional and he could end up getting back into the octagon. Again, we'll see what happens down the road with him. I'll tell you who I don't want to see again, ever, is Anderson the Spider Silva. For the past 7 years, this guy, who was once unstoppable, does nothing but lose. And I don't want to see him get beat up any longer. This past Saturday night, he fought a guy by the name of Uriah Hall, who's a good fighter, but he's a guy that Anderson Silva in his prime would mop up. So they fought Saturday. Silva had a pretty decent first round. It was a slow-moving, slow-starting first round. And eventually in the third round, he got dropped in the second, goes to the third round, and a referee stoppage prevented him from taking any more damage. He was beat up. He was whooped. Uriah Hall beat him and was very respectful to him after. And then afterwards, when the fights were all complete, Dana White, UFC president, says he just doesn't want to see Anderson Silva fight anymore. He doesn't want him getting beat up. He said other guys that he could put him in there would just murder him. Like he's just got killers lined up to fight now. And I hope that Anderson Silva agrees. He didn't commit to retirement after the fight like I thought he would. I was hoping he would. He didn't. It's hard to let go as a fighter. But I really, after a while, when these fighters get old and they don't want to let it go, it starts to become sad. And that's where I'm at with Anderson Silva. I don't want to be sad anymore to see him. I want to remember the dominating Spider Anderson Silva. All right, and then in the world of boxing, Deontay Wilder this past week, he's talking about how back in February when he got stopped by Tyson Fury had loaded gloves. Oh, come on, man. Now, the way you get your gloves is you have to have the commission bring them to you sealed, and you put them on in front of numerous people, including someone from the other side's camp. Someone from Deontay Wilder's side had to have been in that dressing room and watched Tyson Fury put these gloves on. The only thing these gloves were loaded with were Tyson Fury's fists, and he busted you up, Deontay Wilder. Now, I would like to see the fight again. I'm not sure what's going on with that. I know Tyson Fury is supposed to be fighting sometime in December and doesn't even have an opponent yet. That's crazy to me. But somehow he couldn't get it worked out with Wilder, and he's supposed to fight Anthony Joshua next year, I believe. Give us Fury Wilder 3. They had a draw the first time. Fury stopped him. His cornerman, Wilder's cornerman, threw in the towel back in the February fight. And give me a third one, but I don't want to hear Deontay Wilder saying it. He got beat because of loaded gloves. Give me a break on that one. All right, and finally, one cool little story I just came across right as I was about to do this podcast was that the Chicago Cubs did not pick up the contract of Jon Lester to going forward. We're not sure if he'll end up back in Chicago or not, but evidently Lester decided to go out to the bars and just buy a bunch of tabs, a bunch of beers for people in Chicago, and just tipped a ton of money. I think he tipped 34% on all of these tabs, thousands of dollars in tabs. Let's see, he spent $47,000 between Friday and Sunday, including $16,000 just in gratuity. He was tipping 34% because that's his uniform number. I've never been a Jon Lester fan until now. I think that's awesome. I can't tell you how much I appreciate when I hear stories of generosity and tipping hardworking service industry people. All right, gang. Well, thank you all for listening this week. This is a big week, election week. As you're listening this, we may already you might already know who won the presidential election. Heck, we actually may not know this for a while. But just be nice to each other, no matter who the president is. Let's just try to treat each other kindly instead of going on social media and assassinating one another. Go on social media. Here's what you do. You go on social media. You go on the Sports Bros Facebook page and just write all kinds of cool stuff about how much you love the Sports Bros podcast. And remember to smile because God loves you, and so do I. This has been the Sports Bros podcast. Yes, sir. This is just going to be an alternate if you want to use this for the choices of the voices to intro. Okay, be live. Let's hear what you got to say about your favorite Monday Night Football moment or Monday Night Football game. All right there, Mr. Eddie Cool, Mr. Head of Creative. What say you about your favorite Monday Night Football game or favorite Monday Night Football moment?